Good evening and welcome to another program produced and sponsored by the Richfield League of Women Voters. Tonight we're going to be having a discussion on open versus organized trash collection. Now, trash and garbage is something that normally is not a subject for conversation, but it really is an important piece of our communities, and what we do with our trash is obviously very important for our environment. And for the Richfield viewers, you may know that the League of Women Voters Richfield sponsored a forum last March, almost a year ago, on this subject. And a lot of interest was generated. So I decided that maybe tonight we would revisit the subject again in this kind of a setting. So my two guests tonight are Mary Yee, who has studied this subject as a member of the League of Women Voters Edina.
That's right.
Welcome to the show, Mary.
Thank you.
And on my far left is Stephanie Hansen, who's an environmental specialist for the city of St. Louis Park, correct?
Correct, Shannon.
Shannon, I'm sorry, Shannon Hansen.
That's okay.
So welcome to the show. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules. I know you all probably could be doing something else at this moment, maybe cooking dinner or something for the family. So I really appreciate you coming. My guests, normally I ask them to spend a minute or two just telling them the audience a little bit about themselves. Mary, you want to say a few words?
Sure. I grew up in Minnesota, and then I went away to college and lived elsewhere for a long time. And my educational background and professional background is in economics, so I worked for many years as a economic policy analyst on the East Coast. But like so many Minnesotans, I felt the magnetic pull. And so, let's see, almost 15 years ago now, my husband and I moved back here.
Okay.
And so we've been here since, and I live in Edina. And I'm happy to be here tonight doing Trash Talk.
Trash Talk, that's a good name for it. Shannon?
Sure. Like Mary, I did grow up in Minnesota. Went to the University of Minnesota, Twin Cities campus. However, I did not leave the state. I stayed here. Graduated from the College of Natural Resources, and right out of college I got a job at a consulting firm, being an environmental scientist, so a lot of field work, got my feet dirty, and was there for about 8 years, and then was hired on at the city of St. Louis Park then, and so that's where I've kind of come from, and who knows where it's going. It seems to be getting bigger and more popular in the news to talk about organics and recycling, and so it's an exciting time to be in the field.
Yeah, it's I mean, I can remember many years, and you never heard garbage in the newspaper at all. And gosh, I've been clipping things out of the newspaper regularly because there's a lot of talk about it. Okay, we're here to talk about open versus organized garbage collection. Richfield is totally open. City licenses garbage haulers. Right now I think there's 5 or 6 that can be contacted by Richfield citizens, and they come and pick up the trash. Edina has an open system for trash, but interestingly, you have an organized system for recycling. Is that correct?
That's right.
And then St. Louis Park is totally organized for everything.
Organized for everything. Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's define. Mary, do you want to define open and organized?
Sure. Well, an open system for trash hauling is where residents, and that's both commercial entities and residents of a city have the ability to choose a hauler from among a group that's licensed by their city. Whereas organized hauling can be done in different ways. But it typically requires the city to do more work, and the city might ask for bids from private sector haulers, or it could even do it itself. For example, when I looked at different cities around the metro area. In fact, our neighbors, the city of Hopkins, for example, uses municipal workers to collect.
Oh, I was not aware of that.
That's right. So for them, the municipal solid waste is a city function.
Okay.
So, as I said, you could organize in different ways, but the open system is typically, consisting of having the customers themselves choose from among licensed haulers.
And St. Louis Park is totally in an organized system.
Completely.
Let's go start out with just going back in time. Do you know offhand what year it was that they started it?
1960 for garbage was about the time that became organized for garbage collection. And then recycling was organized in 1982. So it's been pretty established.
You've been there for a long time. And as far as you know, the citizens of St. Louis Park are happy.
Yeah, we do a survey every year, and every other year the topic changes. It's either a program survey or a customer service survey. So with the program survey, when we send that out, we just ask people what they think about the program, what's working, what's not, any feedback they can give us, and we use that to improve the program. And then the other one is our customer service survey, and that focuses primarily on the residents' experience calling the contractor's hotline number and their experience calling the city and getting customer service. So in both of those, since I've been at the city and done them, we have well over 90% satisfaction rate with people who respond to the surveys. So people really like the program.
Okay, and Mary, you did a lot of research on the subject, and you went into the FOTH report, I think it is, or FOTH report, the Environmental Health or Pollution Control.
The Minnesota Pollution Control Agency
report, yeah.
Right.
And the statistics in there is actually that Minnesota is kind of a unique state in the sense that most states do organized, and most communities in most states do organized hauling.
Yeah, I think the statistics are that that in other states, the average percentage of communities that use organized hauling is almost 3/4. It's something like 72%. And from the latest data in Minnesota, I think it's something like 29% of Minnesota municipalities use an organized system as opposed to an open system. So yes, in some ways you could say that Minnesota cities are using a different approach than cities in other states.
And in one of your talks that I heard, you said that you came from out east and it was organized. And not only organized, but it was organized by the county, which I found interesting.
Right.
Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, I lived in the suburbs of Washington, D.C., and in this case it was the Maryland suburbs. And a lot of things seem to be organized by the county out there as opposed to at the city level. And it may have something to do with whether the city is formally incorporated or not. But in my part of the county, and it was a very large county, the trash hauling was organized by the county, and to be honest, it was a while ago, so I don't remember whether it was a private hauler that the county had awarded a bid to or whether they were municipal employees. But both for the trash hauling and for the recycling, which were separate trips, it was organized by the county. And we didn't really have any options as to whose service we used. But at the same time, the whole school district was organized by the county.
Oh,
so it's a gigantic school district with like 120 schools. So you could sort of say that that many of the public services, in that part of the country were organized at the county level.
Okay. So let's start talking about open versus organized. Now, one of the things with the open system is that people say, I like talking to my trash guy. I like talking and dealing with the company I choose. Or they will say, I can switch. If somebody gives me a good deal because I'm new, and then when their prices go back to the basic rate, then I'll switch to another company, and they keep switching companies about every year or two to get the benefit of new programming or new trash hauling. Is that what you find too, as you investigated this issue and talked to people, that there were people that really felt passionate about their own company?
Well, I think the person I encountered in some of the meetings on this issue who felt most passionate about this issue said that she invited her garbage man for Thanksgiving dinner every year.
Well, that's really close.
Right. And I pointed out that, you know, even if her city, it was a different city, were to go to an organized system, she could still invite the garbage man to Thanksgiving dinner, and Christmas for that matter. So I didn't think anyone was depriving her of that right. You know, I do think that some people have personal relationships with the companies or with specific personnel associated with those companies. I know my grandmother had a relationship with our former garbage, you know, hauler. So I understand that. But, you know, to be honest, I haven't done any research on really how many people have a personal relationship with their garbage person, okay? So, and I don't doubt that these connections are important to certain people, but I think, you know, public policy has to be based on something else. And, you know, it's people's right to express their concerns about changing any kind of a city service. But, you know, I think we have to look at some other factors when it comes to considering, like, what would make sense as a trash hauling system for our city.
Mm-hmm. Do personnel relationships develop between you?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes. Yep, residents know the drivers by name, drivers know their name, first name basis. They give them gifts, they leave them taped inside the cart, and there's definitely that you know, we want to keep our driver. So when we go through a contract change and we're going to, you know, potentially get a new hauler, we get residents who call up and they say, you know, I want to keep, you know, X hauler because I really like my driver, and, you know, so
the
they
same
do.
thing goes.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Another reason is city involvement and the cost of the city being involved. Now, you know, some cities, once they decide who the contract is going through, then the hauler becomes totally the point of contact, and the city really doesn't do anything except to receive complaints if there's, you know, that the company isn't doing things properly. Other cities do all the billing and do all the contact. That's who they call. How does St. Louis Park work?
Well, with St. Louis Park, what we do is we will go out for a request for proposals once the contract's up, and then we'll send out that request to proposals to haulers who we believe can fulfill the responsibilities of the contract. And then they'll submit a proposal, and then we'll evaluate the proposals and end up choosing 1 to 4 haulers, depending on, you know, how we dice it up, I guess. So this last round started in 2012 is when we kind of started planning and looking at the program and thinking, okay, what do we like? What can we change? What do we want in the new contract? So we put all that language into the RFP of what we wanted the program to look like, and it kind of mirrors the contract. So it's a very detailed RFP process that we go through. So once we got the proposals, then we evaluated them and made some recommendations to council, and then council gives a yay or nay based on a whole bunch of factors that we consider. And this last round, we have waste management was chosen for garbage and yard waste, and advanced disposal for take that back. Waste management for garbage and recycling, and advanced disposal for yard waste and organic waste. The organic waste is the new part that we added.
Yeah, and I'm going to get
contract.
to that in a bit.
Sure.
And you used something that might be kind of a jargon for those of us that have gone out for bids. And so you want to explain what is it now?
Oh, RFP, request for proposals. Yeah.
Request for proposal.
It's basically a document that we put together based on what we want to see the program look like for our residents. So we put that out, then haulers bid on that, and whoever comes in, typically lower price is good, but then we look at other factors too.
Yeah,
and then we make a recommendation from staff, and then council would approve it, and then we award the contract.
Now, does the bill for the garbage come from in this case, waste management for trash and recycling, or does it come as a part of the city bill?
How we bill is we pay waste management in advance a monthly charge per household based on the waste stream they're picking up. So the garbage rate's different than the recycling rate, different than the yard waste rate. And so they will tell us how many houses they went to, how many stops they made, then we'll do our numbers, and then they are paid from the city. And then how we bill from the city standpoint is our utility billing has a line on the utility bill for garbage. So that's just based on the size of trash can you have, and you're billed for that.
So the size of the trash can is
Yep.
everything.
So the city pays the haulers per stop based on what they're picking up, but then the city bills the resident a certain amount for the size of garbage they have. We don't have an individual recycling charge like some cities might. Ours is all rolled into the garbage rate.
So, and then if there's complaints, somebody forgot to pick up my can this week, who do they call, the city or the company?
They can call either. I get a lot of the calls. My coworkers get a lot of the calls. You know, we do try and promote calling the hauler because usually they know what's going on and they can answer the question right away if there's an issue. So a lot of people, I think, call the hauler first, and then if they're not getting through or not getting the answer they wanted or there's a misunderstanding, then they'll call the city, and then we'll work with them to resolve it.
So you obviously have city staff dedicated to garbage.
Correct, yes.
Whereas
Correct.
Other cities, and I believe you could speak to that too, where the company does all the billing and everything, and it sends the bill to the person. I believe Maplewood is like that.
You know, I'm afraid I haven't looked at what Maplewood has done since they changed to organizing, but I do understand that, you know, different municipalities do it differently in terms of organized. So, but I think you're trying to get into a little bit the question of the fact that in an organized system, it requires more involvement on the part of
the
city employees. And that is, you know, and that is an issue, and it's certainly an issue that a city council should consider before they think about organizing, because they would have to consider, do we have the personnel, do we have the right kind of people already, and how many people would we need? Or how many person hours or whatever, you know, and that has to be factored into the cost of the system.
Yeah. Now I know that Maplewood, because I talked to John Newcomb, who was instrumental in getting them to go to the organized system. He was on the council at the time. They do very minimal. They tell people to call the company and try to work it out. The company does all the billing. It would only be if the two can't work it out does you know, the city become involved. Now, do you charge a little bit extra then to pay for your staff time on this, or how does that work? Obviously, or is it just out of the general fund kind of thing?
No, it's not. It's an enterprise fund, very similar to the water utility. It kind of funds itself. So the revenues that we get from recycling, for example, when they're sold, we get that revenue, and that would go into the solid waste fund. And that is what pays for our salaries, partially. We don't have one person dedicated to solely solid waste, but several of us wear the hat of solid waste. We do have a solid waste field inspector, though, and a majority of his job is to be out in the field monitoring what's going on with the contractors and making sure that they're doing everything that they're supposed to be doing. And if not, then we can correct it. Okay. So he's probably the most dedicated to the program, so probably at least one full-time, and then a couple of pretty part-time.
So Edina has organized recycling. Mm-hmm. Why did they choose to go to organized recycling versus trash? Do you know the answer to that question? I'd be curious.
You know, I don't. I think that it might have been that just at the time there wasn't any pressure to have a lot of different firms doing the recycling. I think recycling was a newer thing then, and it's possible that not all of the companies who offered trash hauling wanted to offer a recycling service. So
that could have been it.
Right. And so And there may be other reasons as well, but I think those are some of the things I've heard.
Now, another reason to think about organized is the wear and tear of the trucks upon the alleys in the city.
I can't cite specific figures, but I think interested members of the audience should go to the 2009 Minnesota Pollution Control Agency study, and I believe it's online. So you could go straight to the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency's website, and you should be able to find this study. As I said, it was completed in 2009. And road wear, as they called it, was specifically an issue they looked at, and they came up with estimates from the cities as to what the cities believed were the excessive costs associated with having to make repairs to the roads because of the number of heavy trucks coming through. And alleys, as you point out, are particularly affected.
Yeah.
And they and it's alleys where most of the damage is deemed to have been done by the trucks, because obviously the main roads are shared by a lot of other vehicles. So, but that's definitely an issue that they looked at, and for some municipalities, residents are concerned about it, especially if, depending on how the repair of residential streets are funded. In Edina, for example, I believe it's residents who fund based on their frontage. And so, I should think, if people were aware of the issue, I should think they would be concerned about it.
And I don't know how many companies Edina has. Richfield, like I said, has about 5 or 6 companies.
I just looked at the Richfield website today, so you have 6.
I have 6.
And we have 7.
And you have 7.
Right.
But I believe at the time of that report, somebody, or in the report, it was I think Inver Grove Height or Woodbury or someplace out in that area of the metropolitan area had 19 companies licensed.
Woodbury does.
Woodbury is 19.
18 or 19, yeah.
I mean, that's just incredible, the number of trucks. It just floored me.
Well, and it goes back to what you were talking about earlier about all the staff time that's needed to manage the program, or open versus organized. But if you take a city like Woodbury, who has all those haulers, there's a person that has to deal with all 18, 19 separate issues that might go on, whereas in our organized city, we have one hauler that deals with garbage. And then, so I think there's kind of a balance there on open and organized. And
that's really an interesting point that I hadn't thought about, but I think we talked about the administrative requirements and costs, in terms of personnel, of city personnel, if you were to go to an organized system, because the city has to be more involved. But on the other hand, you're right, that the city has to be involved even when you have an open system. And quite possibly, the more haulers you have in the system, the more involved, the city has to be. So, I don't know. We'd want to really look at the situation. But so maybe the administrative costs of an organized system is not so much higher than an open system than we think.
Well, and then I want to point out, too, that Shannon did say it, and I think it bears emphasis, is that you don't deal just with the garbage contract and all the garbage issues. You have other jobs also. I mean, there's a bunch of you that work with it, but you're not all full-time employees on that specific issue.
Correct.
And that's important. Another issue that comes up a lot when talking about open versus organized is what we call special services. That can be clean out your house twice a year, put the stuff out in the curb, and somebody comes along and picks it up. That can be written into the contract. Some people say that under the organized system, the city can put it into the contract that if you're gone more than 3 weeks, you will get a rebate back or something. If you go, say, 4 months south for the winter, which this year might have been a good thing to do. What kind of special things might go into a contract, and what has St. Louis Park, for example, put into the contract?
Sure. Well, most similar to what you're talking about, we have something called an extended absence credit. So if you're gone, I believe it's 6 weeks or more, I think is the cutoff, then you get a break on your billing because your trash isn't being picked up or your recycling isn't being picked up. Some of the other special things that we put into our contract that if you were to compare what Bloomington does on their cleanup days where they have, you just put everything out on the curb and people come by and pick it up on a certain day. We do have curbside collection of that bulky material, but people have to call the hauler first, the garbage hauler first, pay for it, and then schedule it to be picked up. And that's how it works in our city. And we've talked about having the community-wide cleanup days like that, but it's very cost prohibitive. If you talk to cities that have done that, it's pretty cost prohibitive, and the cleanup afterwards can be kind of a nightmare. So I think that's why a lot of cities are a little bit hesitant to do that, although it's very convenient for the residents.
I was going to say, isn't it a really popular feature in
Yes.
the places where it does
They
happen?
really, and
people love it.
And they absolutely love it. And actually, there's a little bit of recycling goes on because there are people that maybe have antique places or just general places that sell quote-unquote junk, that they go around the night before and kind of scope it out and pick things up. And so that creates a kind of a mess, and the haulers think they got a lot at one place, and they come there and there's very minimal. And so that creates, but I know that Bloomington is having a hard time now finding somebody that has the right kind of trucks to pick that up, because the changeover in the type of garbage has made a difference. But I know, like you say, Edina doesn't do that either.
No, Edina doesn't. And but you know what you just said about, you know, sort of the scavengering that happens.
That was the word I was looking for.
Right, the night before that. You know, I think people think about these in different ways, and it's true that it's possible it could cause problems. But where we previously lived, you know, it was very common, and I think this was just a practice that was tolerated by the county. For example, if my pickup was on Wednesday, you know, instead of waiting till Wednesday to put my stuff out, you know, for example, I got rid of my children's tricycles that way. You know, I put 2 tricycles down at the curb on Tuesday, you know. And lo and behold, you know, a couple of hours later, I saw little kids riding them away with the parents trailing them. So, and that was my intention. So that was perfect. You know, otherwise it would have been picked up on Wednesday. But as it was picked up by somebody who wanted them. So
That's interesting. Rather than whole garage sales, just put the stuff out and...
well, yeah. I mean, obviously you could save them for a garage sale, but you know, we didn't have enough stuff for a garage sale.
sale.
This was the perfect disposal method for me.
That is good. That is good. It's certainly recycling.
Right. Right.
Okay, so the other thing that can happen, maybe you want to make sure that the landfill is in Hennepin County and meets all the requirements that Hennepin County has, which is probably tougher for a landfill than maybe in Nebraska or something. So you might call a hauler and say, where does your garbage go? And he says, Hennepin County. But there's no rhyme or reason or any kind of pressure on him to stay with Hennepin County. He could decide if it's cheaper to truck it to Nebraska, where they don't have a lot of regulations. He could do that. Does St. Louis Park specify?
We do. We specify where they can bring our materials. So in St. Louis Park, all the garbage that's in the carts goes to the incinerator. And the items that are bulky, what we call them, the bed frames, chairs, big wheels, you know, things like that, those do end up in a landfill.
But the rest of it?
But the rest of it's burned. And we have that in our contract, it specifies. Same with the yard waste and organic waste, we specify where that has to go. I think it's good for a city to know where their materials are going and how they're being processed, and making sure that that happens.
In your reading of the PCA, did they talk about landfills and where the garbage really ends up?
Well, they addressed it to the, you know, in the way that Shannon was talking about, that having an organized system permits you a lot more control over these issues, so that you could specify, how the trash or the organics or whatever should be, disposed of. And so, to the extent that you want to support certain environmental objectives in your process, then going the organized route is a way to be able to ensure that. So, yeah, I mean, when I first was introduced to the Pollution Control Agency study, I remember thinking, like, why is the Pollution Control Agency getting into this topic? It didn't make sense to me entirely. And, and what I realized, actually, if you look at the study, is that there's a lot in there about excess fuel usage and about air pollution as a result of this excess fuel usage. Okay.
Because there's so many trucks going around.
Because there are so many more trucks going around due to having open systems rather than organized systems, and so they, this was, I think, the motivation for the Pollution Control Agency doing the study, and and I think it's pretty obvious from their collection of data on extra fuel consumption, okay, that in fact there is quite a bit of extra pollution as a result, air pollution as a result of having open hauling systems. So,
does that factor in? I mean, do people kind of like that part of it, that there's just fewer trucks, fewer pollution? Do they ever comment on that in your customer service or any place? Maybe not.
No, not necessarily. I think you get that a lot from residents when a city is considering going from open to organized. I think our residents, I mean, it's been in place for so long, I think they're used to it. We did, with the new contract, we did switch all of the garbage and recycling trucks to natural gas. Waste Management did. So they're all using compressed natural gas instead of diesel. So that helps a bit with the air quality and pollution factors.
I never thought of that's something that could be in the contract too, is the kind of energy source for the trucks.
Yeah, you can look at a bunch of different metrics that you want as a city. How sensitive are they to equal employment? Do they pay their workers a certain wage? All these things that you can put into the contract that you don't get with open hauling. Minneapolis did a lot more of those requirements in their contract than we did in ours in terms of what metrics they're looking at. But it's definitely something that a city could do.
Yeah, I didn't even think about the wage issue or the diversity issue and making sure equal opportunity is there for everyone.
If I could just interject for a minute on the environmental issue.
Please do, anytime.
Well, you were sort of asking Shannon about the environmental issue and whether that's come up, as sort of a consideration for St. Louis Park residents, and she was saying, well, they're used to having the organized system, so maybe it doesn't come up as explicitly as it once might have. But I just would like to mention to Bloomington residents that I think the city of Bloomington is looking at, is working on a solid waste disposal strategy. I saw reference to this on the City of Bloomington website, so I think it's accessible to everyone. And I think there's been 2 meetings, and at the most recent meeting, they asked residents, they gave residents stickers, I think, and asked residents to put the stickers on the issues that they were most concerned about with respect to the trash hauling issue, okay? And based on what I remember, the two most important issues based solely on that meeting, okay, on the people who attended that meeting, was wear and tear on the roads and environmental considerations. Okay.
Interesting.
Now, environmental considerations could cover a lot of things. I mean, maybe it covers the pollution from having a lot of trucks, but it could also be that, I think increasingly people realize that there are a lot of different disposal issues once the trucks leave your street, and so it's a concern to them. What happens to my garbage or to my recycling stuff, my recyclables, once they leave my driveway? And so, it comes under that category. And so obviously people are concerned about these things.
Of course, a big issue is the cost. Now, I've noticed that, you know, with the flyers and all the mailings you get from all the different companies, that they'll say, okay, for your first 6 months, we will give it to you this rate. And that's the cheapest possible. No other company matches. Or for a year. Hardly ever does it go on for more than a year. So even, you know, you've got the difference in charges to the residents between companies, but even within the same company, you've got different rates, and they're always changing. And so people are really paying a variety and a wide range of rates. But it seems to be, from what I've read and what the report that you mentioned came to the conclusion, is people save anywhere from 30 to 50% on their bill, garbage bill. Can you, well, both of you speak to that. Do you feel your residents are saving money?
I haven't done a recent comparison of what open hauling would be. I've seen a few bills from people that have different haulers in other cities, and their rates are higher. And I believe that MPCA study, I think it was that one, that did have a comparison of several cities, organized versus open. I think they had numbers associated in there. Well, what you were describing is exactly what I've heard from residents in open hauling cities too. They'll get on with a contract, hauler. It'll be one rate and then it'll go up, and then they play this constant game of back and forth to try and get the best rate. And I would imagine that's kind of time consuming, and it's kind of a headache for people to constantly do that. I think one of the benefits of organized collection is you do have that set rate for the contract period, and so people can kind of count on that rate being the rate for a while. So I think that alleviates some problems there. But in terms of how different the price is, I'm not exactly sure. We go based on volume. In our carts, we have 4 different sizes of carts now, so you're billed based on the size of your garbage cart. So you could have a 20-gallon service, 30, 60, 90, and we have several more levels above that even. So that's how you pay in our city.
Mary, would you like to talk about that?
Okay, well, this is my occasion to shine. When the League of Women Voters of Edina studied this issue, we thought we should look at we know what's happening in Edina. We should look at what our neighbors are doing. And so I poked around, and I came up with a chart that basically gave the average price, okay, on a monthly basis for a 60-gallon can for Edina, Eden Prairie, St. Louis Park, and Hopkins. And I'll just say these were chosen somewhat arbitrarily, but not entirely. Edina and Eden Prairie both have open systems, okay, with I think 7 haulers in Edina and at least 7 in Eden Prairie. And then St. Louis Park has the organized system where the city does gets a private contractor, okay? And then Hopkins, as I said, uses municipal employees. It's a municipal service to pick up the trash, okay? And I can tell you that I was trying to compare apples to apples, right? The same can over a monthly basis for the same service. And so St. Louis Park was the least expensive, okay?
So they were the cheapest.
St. Louis Park was the cheapest, by far, okay? Yes. And then Hopkins with their municipal, employees, okay?
Interesting.
And Edina was the next one, and for whatever reason, Eden Prairie had the highest average price, okay? Now this was, this was like 2 years ago that I did this, and and I got the Edina, and getting the St. Louis Park numbers was easy, okay, because it's organized, okay, and it was easy for Hopkins also because, again, the city does the billing, you don't have a choice. So for Edina and Eden Prairie, I actually called up all the haulers and asked, okay. Now I have to tell you, it's not easy to do this research because the first thing they do is they offer you a deal.
The deal, yes.
As you say, they offer you a deal. So it wasn't easy to figure out what might be the, the sort of normal price. And I tried to explain that I wasn't looking for a deal. I just wanted to know what it was. So you could say that, that there's some, that my numbers are a little fuzzy. On the other hand, you would think that on average, they would probably be giving me their best numbers, right?
Right.
And And the fact that they gave me their best numbers and it was still more expensive. I mean, I averaged it out across the multiple companies, you know, that were licensed in Edina and licensed in Eden Prairie. But the fact, you know, is that St. Louis Park, gave their residents the best deal under an organized system.
And it was significant difference.
Right, right. And if I could also say, you know, before I started looking at this with the league, I made the assumption that I think a lot of people make, which is that competition among private companies is a good thing, okay? I mean, it's kind of a central tenet of economics, you know, competition drives prices down, okay? So when I looked at the Pollution Control Agency's numbers, and the Pollution Control Agency's study concludes that generally it's cheaper to have organized systems, cheaper for the residents, okay? They say this is the case nationally, and this is the case in Minnesota, where they looked across a large number of communities. So when I saw that, I thought, you know, this is counterintuitive. This doesn't make sense to me, you know. But then, as I said, I did my little, you know, research on the 4 communities, and it matched up with what, you know, what the Pollution Control Agency found and what other researchers have found. So, you know, I think, you know, people might say, well, you know, this is counterintuitive. In fact, it doesn't make any sense. I think you have to figure out where the mistakes are made or something like that. And I think what you have to consider is that maybe as individuals bargaining with the companies, we're not as good as we think we are, okay?
That could be.
And it's possible that there's some very, very savvy consumers out there who every 6 months, you know, go and get a new deal from a different company. But, you know, as Shannon mentioned, I think that's a little bit of a headache. And I would doubt very much that those people constitute a very large segment of any population. You know, it's just too much work.
Well, and it also takes some skills.
Right.
I mean, computer skills, mathematical skills. And I'm not so sure that some of our communities, a lot of the people can do some of this. And I think of an older person who's just, you know, still trying to stay in her home. I doubt whether she's got the energy or he's got the energy or the inclination or motivation to sit on the phone all the time.
Well, that's exactly it. I mean, who wants to do that? I mean, wouldn't you rather talk to your grandkids than to talk to the garbage company?
Yeah, I would.
Right. I mean, it's, you know, I do think that when, for example, when the league held its meetings, you know, about the findings of our studies, we had interested residents come. And some people were very dismayed that at our findings. You know, they found it contrary to their own experience, and they really felt that they were getting the best deal by, you know, calling different companies and really kind of, you know, using the competition to get the best rates and stuff. And I thought, you know, I don't doubt at all what their experience has been. But I think you can't just look at the experience of 1 or 2 or even a large handful of people and say, well, obviously it's better to have a lot of, you know, different companies competing for your business. Because I think if you look across the communities and look at average rates and stuff, you know, organized hauling,
speaks
yeah,
for itself.
yeah,
Yeah, and that I look at. Well, I mean, everybody keeps talking about the fact that income has, for, you know, middle class Americans and lower working poor, the income has not risen at all, and they're trying to save every penny they can. And, you know, obviously, I'm like you. I was totally amazed to find out that organized was so much cheaper. And if you can do that for your people, it makes some sense to me.
Well, and I'll raise one other issue that I never thought about, but which somebody else raised. They said because in Edina you have to choose a garbage hauler, okay? Some people don't choose anybody, okay?
That's true too.
And they talked about like neighbors that they know who are dumping bags of garbage in the parks, you know, in the garbage cans in the parks and so on. I was pretty astounded to hear this because I thought it takes a lot of chutzpah to go around. You know, I don't think I can do that. I don't have the nerve to go skulking around the parks, you know, to put my garbage in. But apparently, you know, a number of people raised this issue.
I never thought about that.
It's probably not a huge issue, all right? But it is an issue, but it also points to the fact that what you're saying, which is that, people on limited income would benefit from having a lower cost for what's, essentially a public utility in my mind.
Well, it just worries me, and maybe it's because I'm involved with the Richfield Meals on Wheels programs, and what we hear is that for a certain percentage, and any one is too much, but a certain percentage of your people, that's the only meal they eat all day long because they can't afford to buy stuff, good stuff that they should be eating. So they really depend on the meal for their source of nutritious food. The rest of the time they maybe got something cheap or had somebody buy them the cheapest brand of crackers or something, or cereal or something. But, I think when you've got people really making those decisions about food, if you can save them money somewhere else, it's probably all to the good.
Right.
And I know that's been an issue. I know Sauk Rapids, I believe it was, where they started the process of going organized. And there were 2 council people that said, no way, we don't believe this. We believe in an American economic system that allows small business and all this kind of thing. And they just said, no way, I'll never vote for it. Well, the bids came back, and the bid was so low that they said, we have to vote for this. We can't not give our people a chance to get this good of a deal. And so they ended up, and I think Maplewood found that out too. That was the way.
I would imagine.
So anyway, I guess that's the big issue for his money. But I appreciate people that, I guess really want to hang on to their personal relationship. You have to weigh these things and balance, and I guess ultimately city council people have to vote on what's best for the community as a whole versus 1 or 2 individuals.
Right. Well, since I've gotten into this business of talking trash, okay, and maybe you find this too when people figure out what, part of your job is, but, some people who feel very strongly about choice, about having a choice, and especially the people who are, who have a relationship with their current hauler, they would ask me, like, what could possibly justify your trying to take this choice away from me, or trying to change the system on me? And I said, well, I don't currently have a personal relationship with my hauler, so I guess I could be a little more cavalier about this. But I tend to think of this as a public utility issue, okay? And I said, do you want, do you think we should have 7 different electrical companies selling electricity to us on a competitive basis, and we could switch from one supplier to the other? How would that work? And the analogy is not exact, but still, there's a reason why we only have a couple of big electricity producers in the region, all right? And to me, I look at garbage collection in that way. Sort of like, what are the economies of scales? What are the benefits of having fewer haulers who have larger, chunks of the business?
Yeah.
What are the advantages of that?
The efficiency.
Right, exactly, the efficiency.
Yeah.
So, and efficiency is not everything, and I realize that not everyone puts efficiency at the top of their priority list. But, it's the job of city councils, as you point out, to think about what's best for the community. It can't be just based on the personal experience of a few people.
And I know that's always an issue with the small companies. Now, I know when Maplewood decided to go ahead with an organized system, they said, we will buy all the trash cans. So number 1, that gives the smaller business a better, bidding ability. And number 2, when the contract's up and we can get a better deal from another company, we don't have to have everybody go through the process of switching out all the garbage cans. St. Louis Park, what is your experience with that? You've gone through at least 2 different companies right now in your history, or is it more than 2?
Well, for garbage, depending on how far back you go, there's been 3, I think, altogether. Waste Management's been there since 97, I believe, is when they got the contract, or 95, around there. So they've been the garbage hauler this whole time. They used to have recycling, but then it was Eureka for 5 years. That just ended, and now it's back to Waste Management for recycling. So we still have 2 haulers like we did the last contract period. One's just different this time around.
So who supplies, does the city supply the garbage containers?
Yes, we purchase the containers. I mean, there's pros and cons. I mean, it's expensive, but you kind of,
Over the
years, yeah. And then, like you said, there are containers now. So if Waste Management no longer is the hauler, let's say, in the next contract period, then we don't have to switch out all the containers. And we decided to go with the same green body on all of our carts. We have 3 different carts. So the trash can has the green lid, the recycling cart has the blue lid, and our yard and organic waste cart has the brown lid. And what that enables us to do is that if something goes wrong with the cart, or we need to swap out a lid, we have all the same base colors. So we don't have to buy excess amount of inventory just to have on hand. We just put a different lid on it and use the same body. So I think that's really efficient use of money in that sense, for us buying the carts. So I know some of our surrounding cities, like, I'm not sure about Edina, but I know like Golden Valley, Plymouth, and Minnetonka. I believe the hauler purchased the cart in those cities.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, our carts belong to the haulers. And
Yeah,
so,
I think on almost all organized,
Nice,
I mean, open systems,
Right.
the things
Right.
belong to the haulers.
But I think one of the points you were trying to make is that there are ways that cities could organize themselves that would not so much disadvantage a smaller business, right?
Right.
Right. And I think some cities have thought of other ways too, because there is concern about edging out the smaller businesses that have had a share of the clientele in any city or something like that. And I know that some cities, I think, try to use a consortium system,
Yeah.
where they get their present haulers, when they're switching over from open to organized, they get their present haulers to try to come up with a consortium, a division,
Yes,
of
the
the
city.
customers, if you will. Yeah. And in principle, that makes a lot of sense to me, because then if each hauler is only working within one part of the city, it's bound to be more efficient in terms of, the routing and the use of the trucks and so on. Yeah.
Okay, the one thing I want to get into a little bit is organic recycling, because I think we're going to hear more about that. And Hennepin County basically at least told Minneapolis that they better get their act together and start doing organic recycling, because they wanted the incinerator to be running at 100%, and Minneapolis said no. So then I think the tit for tat was Hennepin County said, okay, then you better start doing organic. But so much of our recycling, or our waste, is organic waste. Everything from banana peels to acorn, or I guess we don't eat acorn, the squirrels eat acorn, but peanut shells. Now you already do it?
We did, yep. That was a addition to our contract this last time.
Last time
Yep,
around?
yep. We added organics. It's a voluntary program, so residents who are currently on the city's contract can sign up for it if they want, and it's $10 a quarter. It's billed on their utility bill, and with that $10 a quarter, they get a cart. We initially rolled out 90-gallon carts, but we have smaller. They can choose from the 60 or the 30 as well. And then we supply them with about a year's supply, 200 and some compostable bags, 2 different sizes. And we just ask that they bag their organics in their house, tie it in the bag, and then they put it in their cart. And then it gets picked up by the same hauler that picks up all the yard waste in that one truck.
Does that include meat products?
Yes, it does. It's all fruit, vegetables, cooked, raw meat, fish, dairy, bones, all of it, and then also food soiled paper products and
Like pizza boxes?
pizza boxes, frozen and refrigerated cardboard. That stuff's typically not recyclable. It can go in the organics, though.
So is this separate from yard waste, the organics?
Yes, because when you sign up for it, you can still set out yard waste like you normally would on the program, like you've been doing for years. The only difference now is that you would get a cart, and you can put your yard waste in there along with your organic waste.
Okay, so so if you didn't opt for the organics option, you could say keep putting out your grass clippings and your bags of leaves.
Just like you normally do, yep.
Normally do. But if you do opt for the organics, then you get the extra cart, and then you could put the yard waste and the organics in the same cart.
Correct, yep.
Okay.
And if they had over more yard waste than can fit in the cart, they can still set it out. Just like normal, there's no penalty for that or anything. They don't, yeah, so they can use it, you know,
Either way.
different parts of the year I'm sure are going to have different amounts of material in them. And
Yeah, and I'm thinking of somebody like me, and I'm sure a lot of gardeners who all the grass clippings and leaves get mulched and then put out in the beds and, and in the gardens.
Yep, and we still allow
So then
backyard.
I would only have the organics really in that situation. Now, is Edina looking at going to that too?
You know, the way Edina, it works in Edina is that, as far as I know, only one of our haulers, one of our 7 haulers, okay, offers
Organic.
offers organic pickup. And I was kind of quizzing Shannon because my understanding was that in some places yard waste and organics are not the same things. But in our case, our organics hauler takes the stuff to a place that can process both yard waste, which could include, I think, like, you know,
Small branches.
branches up to like 3 inches in diameter or something like that, which is very different if you think about it than say a rotten piece of, you know, cheese.
Right.
You know, so, but in our case, yes, it all goes into one bin. And, you know, this is really a hot topic, I mean, organics, and I think it's recognition that there's way too many organics going into the landfills and so on. And so, but, you know, as a gardener, I think I'd like to make just a quick pitch for home composting.
Okay,
So,
go ahead.
I won't go into it, but, you know, but did you see there was a Star Tribune op-ed piece just 2 days ago about encouraging home composting? So, you know, that's something I do in addition to having my organic service. You know. So,
and
you
people
probably
can
do too.
definitely do that, continue doing the backyard composting, and they can do organics as well.
Well, I just think this is so important. As the population density and population increases, you know, we need to reuse this stuff. Our resources are finite; they're not infinite. And I know the League of Women Voters has had a history for years and years of encouraging recycling and this kind of thing, and, you know, bring your clothes to Salvation Army or someplace. I mean, everything, you know, maybe can be recycled. So, well, we are nearing the end. Any parting? I mean, St. Louis Park, the residents are happy. As far as you can tell, they're happy. And the vast majority. I mean, there's always a few who are never happy, but you would say 95% is a reasonable number?
The numbers come in well over 90% satisfaction in the surveys.
And with all of your research, you have come to maybe a conclusion that at least we should be looking into this a little more?
Well, I think cities should be exploring organized hauling. You know, and you know, all the issues that you brought up today, I think the fact is that, you know, talking about trash is a really important conversation. so the people watching this are already, you know, interested in trash, but maybe they want to bring it up with their neighbors or over, you know, the dinner table. Well, maybe not over the dinner table.
Over a bridge or something like that.
Right. At an opportune moment, they should bring up the trash talk.
Okay, well, we have run out of time here, and again, I want to just really express my appreciation for both of you being here. To my audience, again, my guests were Mary Yee from Edina, who's a member of the League of Women Voters of Edina, and Shannon Hansen from St. Louis Park, staff member of the city staff person, let's put it this way, and involved in the St. Louis Parks program. Thank you so much for being here tonight. And to my audience, thank you. Bye-bye.